Hey, future Black and Latinx leaders. You are listening to the Keys to the Office podcast, where we interview amazing professionals who share their individual career paths to set you up for success. We're giving you the keys to the office, and all you need to do is show up ready to unlock the door. Let's jump into today's episode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Keys family. I'm excited today. We have Tremaine Wills, investment advisor, tax strategist, accountant, owner of Mind Over Money. And I'll tell you why I'm excited because, as I've shared with her, I remember starting in this industry in 99 and really not seeing anyone who looked like me, doing the thing, right? We were back office, paperwork, customer service, support. But this woman here has her own RIA and is killing it. And so we're going to talk about all of that. I'm going to my cheeks are sore because I'm so happy. So I'll stop here. Okay. And she's from Virginia, but okay, pause. Tremaine, please introduce yourself to the family.
Yeah. So first of all, let me say thank you so much for just extending the opportunity, sharing your platform. I don't take these things lightly because, this is our trusted sacred space, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate you for this conversation. But yeah, you said everything, right? So, hey, everybody. I'm Tremaine Wills. I'm from the great state of Virginia, born and raised in Newport News. I'm a Hampton University grad. Let's go Pirates. And, I'm a lover of Black women doing great things. I feel like if I had to sum up who I am, I feel like that's the answer, right?
That's it. Same. And this energy is like serious right now. Go us. So we talked about what you do. I grew up with a mother who worked in financial services. So I think low key that seed was planted from my mother. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Rich.
Say less.
That's really what I wanted. So my experience was the opposite. I grew up with a single mother that was just trying to figure out how to make it work, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm very familiar with the phrase, you got McDonald's money, right? And the answer being no, at least for a while until I'm like, how I make money?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what kind of pushed me into this space, was figuring out it's not enough to just make it, because I can leverage my talents, my skills. I can make money. I know that I will never not be able to generate income, but I did not know how to make the money work for me. And I didn't have an example of that anywhere around me. So I'm like, what these other people doing? Right. And how do I get access to that information? And that's how I kind of was just like, I want to know.
Yeah.
That's how I got there.
That's good, because when I started 99, 2000, I remember seeing the people who look like me doing the back office support, the administrative, the customer service work. But when I was on the phone talking to a rep or an advisor, they were white men. They were typically older white men. And I was like, okay, so how did they get there? And for a while in my head, I was like, well, it's not possible for me, right? It's not possible for me to get to that point, clearly, because no one else is doing it. And then I realized, okay, so they got this license and they went and did this and they have these numbers and I need to figure out what these numbers mean. What is Series 6 and Series 60 and all of that, right? So I was like, okay, well, if they did it and I'm pretty smart and I love taking tests, right? So I went and got a 6 and a 63 and went into sales and relationship management. And I was like, dang it, there isn't anyone like me here. I am the only person who looks like me on this team. The only person, right? And then I said, okay, I'm going into HR because I'm going to change that in this industry. So that was my path, right? Started with seeing mom doing it. Was there any hesitation, right? Because there weren't people who generally looked like you. Yeah.
So the short answer is yes. My options when I was leaving college were NASA, which is where my career began. I was a contract specialist at NASA. And that's kind of where I fell in love with the numbers. I'm like, they got a big budget for this thing they're gonna crash and break, right? But
Pretty much.
That's what I was seeing, like all the money that was being spent. So my options were NASA, Accenture, a couple other consulting companies. Deloitte was one of them, and then PNC Investments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, let me look at all these options and see who's gonna pay me the most money.
Home.
And the place that was going to pay me the most money was PNC Investments, but it was also the furthest away from home. And as I mentioned, I'm from Newport News, but I went to Hampton University, which is literally 12 minutes from my mother's house.
Wow.
And so my hesitation was like, oh gosh, I'm about to leave my community. I think I'm just going to keep this job at NASA. And my mom was like, no, you go. And I was like, okay. And so I left and I went, and it was the hardest 2 years of my life.
Really?
It was so hard. Well, one, because I was disconnected from the community. And then two, because I went to an HBCU, getting pushed into financial services that way and not having that same loving, supportive community in my early 20s. I'm like, I came from Black is great to where the Black folks at, right? Then it was like an extra layer of just feeling like I didn't belong because I was in a banking center in a suburban area, lots of white money, and the experience was just not pleasant. I have a very, very painful memory of a customer coming in, and my manager was just like, just take the money, right? But he comes in, he's like, I'm looking for the Black girl, right? Walks in with $250,000 in a suitcase. And that's what he says to the person at the front desk. I'm looking for the Black girl. And I'm like, first of all, how he know I'm Black? He just talked to me on the phone, right? And nobody corrects him. They send him to my office. And I was like, wow, all y'all really care about is getting this man's money? There's no desire to appreciate who I am and make sure that I feel comfortable and safe and valued. And none of those things mattered because I got him to come in here with this money to invest, but it didn't matter that he disrespected me in the process. And so it was in that moment, I was like, I'm disposable and I don't want to be in this space because it's not safe. So that was the beginning of the end when I knew I had to go out and do my own thing.
And that was early in your career.
I was in year 2.
Did you have mentors either before or after that?
I didn't really get any mentors until I decided to open my RIA.
Wow.
In 2020. So all this time I was just dipping my feet into different pockets of financial services, trying to find the place that felt safe. And I had bottled up so much mistrust that I just didn't believe that financial services could be what I thought it could be, this empowering, place for growth and learning and just teaching people how to use money as a resource and not this scammy, slimy space. And that's what I was becoming accustomed to. People don't want to actually help. They just want to sell you products. And I'm like, if that's what this is, I can't be in this world because that's not who I am. I know that money is just a resource. It's an extension of who we are. And if I can't teach people that, I don't belong here.
You're speaking to me in so many ways, because I remember thinking as I was at a sales conference, I don't want to be here. This feels so gross. And at the time, there were a couple of advisors being inappropriate, right? And I thought, I need out. but this is where the money is, but I need out. Like, I got it. This feels gross. And I don't have anyone who looks like me, who can talk to me about what this journey could look like.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's interesting that we have that same experience in this industry. How did you push through? Right. So I get, it was like, okay, I'm done. Talk to me about what the transition looked like, how you had to prepare for the transition. Are we talking additional school, additional licenses? Talk about that.
Yeah. So when I was at PNC, I forget what combination was, but whatever the combination, I had a 7, series 7.
Yep.
I think 7 and 666. I don't know.
Or 63, 65, right? So either that combination or
I didn't have the 65 back then. I had the 7 because I remember that taking them options and I was like, ooh, child. Woo.
Yes.
But that's when I knew. I was like, if I could pass this, I could take any test.
Right.
But yeah, so I left there after 2 years and came home. And I was like, yeah, this isn't how I'm going to do this thing. And I started financial coaching, trying to do more like budgeting support, debt, like the ground level type stuff. And really too, because I had got kicked so many times, I was like, maybe I don't belong here. Let me go back to a place that's safe. Mm-hmm. Right. So I shrunk down. And at the time I was like, this is me doing more service because I can touch more people. And really it was fear, all the things you tell yourself to justify shrinking back. And while I was doing that, I went into the classroom and started teaching.
Okay.
So I was a classroom educator. I taught high school math. And on the side, I was doing my financial coaching and, helping people with budgets and stuff. And my heart was just like, you ain't supposed to be in this classroom, right? But I was like, I'm doing good for the kids. It's still service. But at the end of the day, I've known for a long time I was supposed to be working with money. And I was running, okay? Running, track star. And then finally, in the classroom, I was like, I can't make the impact I'm supposed to make because I'm not supposed to be here. And so one of my good friends, Kevin Matthews from Building Bread, he was like, you got to go to this FinCon thing, conference, and go meet other people. Because he also was a financial advisor who went to the Great Hampton University, right? And so I'm like, all right, I'll go to this conference. And I get there and I'm like, this is all the resources I need. Yeah. There were like so many people who were nerds about money like me. And then I finally met people who looked like me that weren't slimy salespeople.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right. Because all skin folk ain't kinfolk, right? Ooh. So
understand.
Right. And so I was like, okay, this feels like it could be the start of something different. Mm-hmm. And so it was there when I was like, okay, I think I actually can build something the way that I want it to be. I don't know like the legal route I need to take, but I'm sure if I ask people enough questions, I can figure this thing out.
Yeah.
And so that's when I got introduced to the XYPN community. And I was like, oh, it's a wrap. They got a roadmap. I just need to get plugged in. Right. And from there, I took the Series 65. I had lost my licenses, y'all. Cause the whole parking thing, and I didn't want to work. Yeah, whatever. And I'm like, I can take a test. I just take it again. And so I retook the test and got the 65 so that I could give investment advice. Mm-hmm. And it's been a wrap since then.
Yeah. So that's a real thing, right? The loss of licenses. I let my 6 and 63 go when I decided to go full force into HR. And I thought all the sleepless nights I put into getting those. It's a real thing. And I've actually interviewed a few people who said, I'll just test again. And I was like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to do that?
Now, I'm not taking that Series 7 again.
What?
I'm not taking that one again. But I'm like, how hard can it be? I'm a pretty good test taker.
Same. So, okay. You find the mentors, you find the community, you find your village, right? They've got the roadmap. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Talk to us about mind over money and how your experience as a child, right? Because I often think about how many financial advisors grew up with money, grew up with resources, right? Grew up with spoons that may have been silver, versus someone who didn't have, right? Who understands lack, and when money is tight, then shifting into this space where they're giving financial advice. So I want to just take us from how that experience lent itself to the development of mind over money and then the growth of it as well.
Yeah. Ooh.
Right.
So it has been a transformational journey for me, as a person. Because I experienced so much financial trauma myself that I had not resolved prior to starting the business. I had a lot of unlearning to do. And it was hard because you're talking about telling other people that they can be wealthy and they can live in abundance and not believing it for yourself. And so I had to peel back all of these layers as to why I didn't believe it was possible for me, even though I knew all the things to do, but continuously self-sabotaged my own wealth.
Yeah.
But still was out here trying to save everybody else. Right. So, lots of therapy, lots of just honest conversations about what I believe to be true about who I was and the impact that I could have, and why not me. And so I think initially when I was shrinking, I was afraid of what that transformation would have to be for myself. And so if I did not try to change and did not try to grow, I wouldn't have to address, the monsters in the closet. Right.
Yeah.
But then if I never freed myself, how could I expect to free anybody else?
You couldn't.
Right. So that's what the bulk of, so mind over money became a thing. I started coaching in 2014. And it's been the past, I'd probably say 7 years, until yesterday. Right. That it's just been this journey of shedding the skin, the belief that I wasn't good enough to be a financial advisor, that could be wealthy, that could, have this thriving practice and be an example, a model, and not just, hey, here's what the textbook says to do, but to really implement the things for myself and be able to say, hey, I was able to start my own, SEP IRA and fund my retirement, and I'm going to be retiring early. To be able to have those type of conversations versus saying to a client oh, well, what I've done for another customer.
Yeah.
So having that shift has been massive.
Yeah. It starts with your mindset.
And that's how I always knew something had to be different in my brain. But at the time I wasn't able to really articulate why I was experiencing the roadblocks I was experiencing. And so I think that especially for the women that I'm trying to serve, I need them to know that your thoughts are powerful, and what you believe about yourself often will set the limit on how much abundance you will experience. So it starts in your mind first, and then the money just flows. It really comes when you start to walk in alignment, get to that purpose, and shift that belief to, I am who God says I am. So
that's so powerful, because I don't think enough people know the money will come, right? But if your mind isn't where it needs to be, the money will also go. Okay, so as a community, not even thinking about, the career path of, being a financial advisor and getting into this industry, but just as a community, shifting the mindset, right? From one of lack to abundance, right? And your thoughts being things. I think my question to you, because I think about how I've seen it happen, as someone who once lived, I'm sure, well below the poverty level at that point, as a single mother myself. So I get it. Talk to me about the importance of budgeting, right? And I've heard different, definitions of it, different explanations of it. But I think about that often as one of the roadblocks to wealth, right? Because of our fear of it, our uncertainty, our lack of knowledge. Speaking to the community, right? Talk to us a little bit about what those conversations look like that you're having in terms of budgeting.
Yeah. So what I'm realizing is that a lot of roadblocks people have toward budgeting are how they perceive it to be. Like, is it something that exposes a limitation, or is it something that see as something that is empowering? And that makes all the difference between if you commit to it or not, right? So if I see a budget as something that tells me I don't have money, I can't do this, like all of the no's glaring at me, then I'm less likely to want to even try to do it because it makes me feel inadequate. But if I see a budget as a roadmap, a guide telling my money what job it has to do, right? Then that's different. It's like, okay, come on, employees, let's go to work, right? You all have jobs. And when you're not doing your job well, you get fired and you get reassigned to another place, right? And so I think like the perception of how you view budgeting is what that first step has to be. It's more than just the budget itself. It's like, how do I see this process?
Yeah. So shift the thought process, the mindset, right, of exposing lack to one of, this is how I prepare for wealth, right? This is truly going to be the key to the office.
Yes.
Right? That's it. So you've been successful, uber successful, over the past several years, recognized repeatedly. And as someone who is in the space, right, I know this to be a fact. That couldn't have been easy.
It was terrifying. So in some ways, it was validating. But in other ways, it was like, oh no, people are going to start to see me and expect things.
Ooh. Right.
Yeah. And so I feel like, at least for like the past 2 or 3 years or so, I've been in a space where I've been getting prepared about how to handle being in the spotlight. Because I know that larger stages are coming. I've known this for a long time, that the assignment was large. But, 4 or 5 years ago, I was rejecting it because I'm like, I don't want anybody to see me.
Yeah.
Right. But there is a greater level of visibility and expectation once you start to become more visible in, these spaces. So you got to be prepared to be picked apart. And I was like, I don't know if I want that. But then I was like, you know what? Let's go. What I got to hide.
Ooh. So let me ask you this. For those who don't know, drop the receipts.
What kind of receipts you want?
Top 100 financial advisors, under 50. Like,
yeah. So, okay, you want those kind of receipts. Yeah. So, this year, 2022, I was named top 100 investment advisor by Investopedia. That was a huge shocker to me, right? And so for you guys, everything that I'm naming, I didn't pay for nothing, right? I don't pay to be on lists.
Talk about it.
I think that's scammy and slimy, right?
Yes.
All of these things have come because somebody saw me. And so while I got my chest puffed out, it's also gratitude because somebody spoke up for me, right? but yeah, so Investopedia and then the Association for African American Financial Advisors, I was named top 50 under 50 in 2020, which was a huge, like, oh, y'all caught me early in the game, right? I had just registered my my firm in March of 2020. So like to get on that list that year, I was like, oh, okay, whatever I'm doing, keep doing it, girl, right?
Yes.
And then I've been on Wall Street Journal podcast and have been mentioned in, the Yahoo Finances, Business Insider, Forbes, like all the places, right? And so it's been, like I said, validating and also refreshing just to be seen, because for so long I was shrinking and I was afraid to like show my brilliance, because that means people are going to start to pick me apart. And I remember the first time I got like my negative like comment on Twitter. Somebody was listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast and they were talking about my comment about like the Black tax. And how for many of us, when we are the first in our families to get to any level of wealth, there's a tax associated with that. And the comment was like saying that I was blaming Black people for being broke. And I'm like, you took that out of context. Like it's a cultural thing we experience because we are community minded and we want to help our people, but it's also an expectation. And so that's a tax that other communities don't have, which slows down our capacity to build wealth, right? So I just remember thinking like, okay, this is just the first of many more opposing views that are going to come from me being vocal and educating and promoting. And I'm like, okay, I got a lot more conditioning to go through because it's only going to get more challenging. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're ready, though. Like, yes, it gets more challenging, but my goodness, I think you're ready. I think you understand the assignment fully. Let me ask you this. Recognizing that this podcast is called The Keys to the Office, where we really focus on giving our students, traditional and non-traditional students, insight into what their potential career path could look like in different industries. What would you say is one major key for someone who is listening to this podcast now, maybe considering financial services? Maybe, right? It's scary. You and I both know that there's uncertainty, there are obstacles, there are challenges. What's one major key, one thing they should do today or focus on next to set themselves up for success?
Oh, this is good. I really think to set yourself apart, you have to find a problem and then be able to be the solution to that problem, right? So a lot of us will chase whatever the most popular way to make money is right now. And those trends fade away, right? But if you can become the one that is the problem solver for a particular problem and people know you as that type of problem solver, you'll be able to make the change that you want to make. So I think if you're interested in financial services and you can identify a particular group that needs a particular solution, that could be your lane, right? And so it took me a little while to kind of navigate around that, but I found my lane. I'm like, okay, I serve Black women entrepreneurs who need plans in place to retire. We work too hard. And so we do all this, slaving over our business to grow it. And then we look up 20 years later and there's nothing set aside, right? No, that's a problem for me, right?
Yeah.
And so being the solution to that, I'm like, okay, I'll always be able to push somebody forward because I can help them solve this problem. And that's how you set yourself apart, right? There's lots of different avenues you can go down to do it, but focusing your energy on solving a problem, that's going to be your ticket in this space.
I love it. What's next for you?
So big vision. I'd like to introduce more women of color into this space.
Mhm.
I want to build a training program that takes college students through their matriculation, gets them what they need to get started on the path to CFP, and then they come out with a job in hand, right? Like that's big vision. And then ultimately, you know, they might stay with my company a couple years or so, and then they break off and have their own company, right? Because ownership is a big deal.
Yep.
So that's like big vision where I want to go. But between now and then, finding more Black women entrepreneurs to support,
Yes.
and helping us retire us because we work so hard.
I want to be part of the execution of that big vision. Okay. I'm telling you, my roots are deep in this industry. My experience runs deep, and my passion is there for seeing more of us. I've done a lot of work in the early talent space, specifically with diverse groups of talent, internship programs, and all that fun stuff, building those. So I want to, let's talk offline about what that could potentially look like when you're ready. When you're ready, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm raising my hand. So this has been great.
Yeah.
This has been great. I was super excited. I was like, this is gonna be good. Like someone out there needs to hear this woman talk about her journey, because we're not painting it as, you know, all rainbows, right? That's not the reality of it. But there are mentors out there. There are groups out there. You have to be intentional about connecting with them. Hopefully this podcast has helped. How can we find you? How can we support you? And if needed, how can we get support from you?
Yes. So I'm at Tremaine Wills on all social media platforms. My website is mindovermoney.net. And so if you are a Black woman entrepreneur and you're like, you know what, I do want to retire, be sure to connect with me at mindovermoney.net or shoot me a DM at Tremaine Wills on any social media platform. Awesome.
Last tidbit for someone who's looking for a mentor, what do you suggest?
Oh, find me on LinkedIn. Let's connect. But outside of that, really like network on Twitter. I was able to connect with so many people. That's how we connected, on Twitter. So many people on Twitter. I'm like, there's a community here. And even when I was struggling with my estate planning course, I was able to go on Twitter and just like say, hey, y'all, it went bad, right? And so many people just wrapped their arms around me and was like, you know, I went through this too, right? But Twitter has been great for finding and making connections in this space. And then, of course, there's LinkedIn. So
yeah, for sure.
That's what I would say.
Thank you, Ms. Tremaine. You're now stuck with me, just so you know.
That's fine.
You are stuck with me. We will talk again soon. This has been amazing. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
If you're hearing this message, you have listened to the entire episode. And for that, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to subscribe. Leave us a review and check out our website at www.thekeystotheoffice.com. We look forward to connecting with you in a future episode. Until then, go be amazing.